Welcome to Same Spit, Different Face TV. Well, my opinions is facts, and if you don't like my opinions, you can start your own podcast. And it's free. So don't forget to spit on the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification. Now, let's talk about this Diddy situation. We already know that Diddy got found guilty 2 of the 5 charges.
Holmes, who pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, as well as transportation to engage in prostitution, was acquitted on the 3 most serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering and only convicted of prostitution-related offenses.
Because he didn't get found guilty under the RICO Act, we essentially get to look at this situation and say, what is the time frame? So when we're looking at the situation with Cassie, the Cassie charge, his lawyers may actually argue that that charge shouldn't even stand because it's out of the time limit. It's out of the time where they should be able to prosecute him for that.
Being that he was found guilty under the Mann Act, the statute of limitations for the Mann Act stand on their own. And the statute of limitations for the Mann Act is 5 years.
Now, the reason it was able to be brought in is because it was brought in under RICO. And that's just the things I'm hearing around. Now, another thing is when we look at this Diddy situation, a lot of people are upset that he got off. Did he commit domestic violence? Of course he did. But is he on trial for domestic violence? As his team said, and essentially he said, if he was on trial for domestic violence, of course he should be found guilty for that. And his lawyer even said, hey, if this was a domestic violence case, Diddy wouldn't even be a trial because he would be trying to plead out and plead guilty. Now, the one thing I really don't like about it is that everybody is upset and saying, oh, the justice system don't work. And I'm not saying that the justice system worked perfectly, but when we in situations where people wanted to go a certain way and people wanted to go in their favor, they don't say nothing. We've seen a lot of guys go to jail for being falsely accused of grape, and we've seen football players get their careers destroyed and didn't even make the NFL, and we've seen this time and time again.
Prisoner, an inmate, a felon, a convict, to having to walk the streets for an additional 5 years on strict custody parole as a registered offender, being called all types of names and degraded and humiliated. To be in that courtroom May 24th, 2012, and to finally hear the district attorney's office concede to the matter, deeming me factually innocent. Factually innocent is we made a mistake, we messed up. You should have never been arrested. 2002, I was 16 years old. I was 11th in the nation as a linebacker playing for Long Beach Poly High School, very notorious school for football. I had verbally committed to USC on a full scholarship.
And people don't fight out for stuff like that. It appears to me that a lot of time people only try to fight out when it's against women. But when the men get railroaded in the court system, people say, oh, they got to take it on the chin. Well, they asked for that. Even when we look at the Diddy situation, a lot of people say, well, he got away with a lot of things in the past, so this is his karma for now. And that may be true, but is that really how we want to look at the system? Is that really how we want the system to work? Do we want the system to be a system of, well, they didn't get you on this, so now they can railroad you for that? We see that a lot of times in the hood, man. The police may run down on somebody for loitering. That person may run away. The police may catch them. And because that person ran, the police beat them up, or the police put drugs on them, or the police put a pipe on them. And now this person's life has been derailed. We've seen this happen with Meek Mill.
Meek Mill is set to be arraigned today on reckless endangerment charges for allegedly riding an ATV through Manhattan.
Meek Mill admitted that he ran away from the police, and Meek Mill allegedly had a gun on him at that time, but he was saying he never pointed a gun at a police. And one of his biggest things was, well, what do cops do when people point guns at them? Cops kill black guys and cops kill other people when they don't have guns on them. So just imagine if I pointed a gun at them. And that's what Meek Mill was saying. So what we have to do is we have to, as a society, as a people, we have to stop only trying to support the justice system working incorrectly or the justice system being corrupt when it's somebody we don't like or when we see something we don't like. Now, when we look at this Diddy situation, We not saying that Diddy is absolved of anything he's done. We not saying that Diddy should be able to get away with what he did to Cassie. Now, one of the biggest things I've said, and I've said this in a bunch of videos, once Diddy get out, Diddy should commit the rest of his life to two things. The first thing he should commit his life to is domestic violence awareness. He should put his money, his time, and energy into trying to help women of domestic abuse. That's donating money to shelters. That's donating his time to shelters. That's even maybe starting a domestic violence show where women can sit down and tell their story, and women can get a chance to get some healing and be able to bring more awareness to domestic violence, because it's a lot of domestic violence going on. It's a lot of times where this domestic violence happen, and the women don't end up making it out. The women end up getting killed in that situation. Sometimes even the children end up getting killed in that situation. So that's the first thing Diddy should do. Take his money, try to help with domestic violence. And then the second thing Diddy should do is Diddy should take his money and try to figure out a way to get some of the RICO laws changed. I think when you look at Diddy, Diddy was somebody who was overcharged. Like we keep saying, was Diddy guilty of domestic violence? Of course. Do we think Diddy was guilty of racketeering? No, because he was basically doing everything by himself. And one of the phrases was, a freako doesn't mean a RICO. Now, do we think Diddy is a freaky person? Of course we do. Do we think Diddy is bisexual? Of course we do. Do we think Diddy put his hands on Cassie? Of course he put his hands on Cassie. We saw the video. But then when we sit down and we listen to the trial, and we end up seeing that it was a lot of instances where, lies were told. It was a couple of people who got on stand and perjured themselves. One of the witnesses even, she said that something happened on the balcony. But the day she said it happened, Diddy was already in an entire another state. Diddy was in, if I'm not mistaken, Diddy was in New York when she said the balcony situation happened in LA. And what happened is a lot of these different or bigger publications wasn't even reporting that. And because they wasn't reporting that, it was turning into a situation of where nobody was able to get that information. Now, do I believe that Cassie went through some trauma? Of course she did. But the one thing that a lot of people not talking about, and I may catch a lot of flack from this, do we think that Cassie caused some trauma to Diddy? And do we think that Cassie caused some trauma to herself? Yes. We got to look at the fact that while Cassie was dealing with Diddy, Cassie was also dealing with Kid Cudi. Now, some of y'all may say, well, Diddy had a bunch of ladies of his own, so why can't Cassie have somebody on the side? The difference is that Diddy was telling Cassie that he had women on the side. Diddy was inviting Cassie to be a part of these situations with these other women. So he wasn't lying to her about the situation. And when a lot of y'all look at these situations, y'all look at them as if, oh, well, Diddy did this and he did that. But Diddy was honest with the women about, listen, I live a certain type of lifestyle. I need my women to be able to do this and do that. And are you willing to do this? Kid Cudi even got on the stand and said, hey, I felt played like Cassie. And a lot of times in life, men get killed like this. What ends up happening is a person like Kid Cudi, he'll think, oh, I have to protect my woman. And he's thinking, oh, Diddy stalking Cassie. Diddy running behind Cassie. Cassie don't want Diddy no more. But then you come to find out 4 or 5 years later that Cassie is still going to freak offs with Diddy. Cassie's still dealing with Diddy behind Kid Cudi back. So when we talk about the thing and we say, oh, Cassie had no other outside resources. She had nobody she could confide in. She had nobody she could talk to. But we see her with Kid Cudi. And not only was she with Kid Cudi, she was dealing with the trainer. Now, I know a lot of people gonna say, yo, you're trying to weaponize her sexuality. No, we're not trying to weaponize her sexuality. What we're trying to do is we're trying to add context to the situation of the things that are happening to show you that although Diddy is a bad person, Cassie has done some things that are bad as well. And like I say, I understand that we put limits on what we will accept and what we won't accept. Lil Uzi Vert, he was in LA. He saw St. John with the girl that he liked at the time. But because y'all liked Lil Uzi Vert, because Lil Uzi Vert was backed by DJ Drama, because Lil Uzi Vert was one of the biggest streaming artists in the world at the time, nobody batted an eye at the fact that he ran down on this girl. He allegedly put a gun to her stomach. He allegedly threatened her in St. John, and he didn't. He got found guilty of that case, but he basically took a plea deal to avoid jail time.
Hey, we're going to talk to you about Samir Woods. Samir Woods, also known as Lil Uzi. Now, he was former boyfriend-girlfriend with a gal by the name of Brittany Bird. And Brittany Bird made allegations that he assaulted her, both with a gun and assaulted her physically. He put a gun into her stomach and then he struck her. Is that Lil Uzi saw that she was talking to St. John and possibly talking about some kind of business deal. Well, that pissed him off, and he gets out of his car and tries to hit St. John, falls to the ground, and then comes up, and goes to confront him, and he puts a gun in her stomach and strikes her.
But then when the situation happened with Megan Thee Stallion, now everybody love women. Let's fight for women. When, if I think his name is Russell Crowe, when Russell Crowe got into it with Azealia Banks and he allegedly called her a black bee, and he kicked her out his house and he called her the N-word, allegedly. Y'all didn't care about that. So do y'all really care about women, or do y'all care about the person? Do y'all care about the person y'all don't like, or do y'all care about the person y'all do like? Y'all don't care about it. We look at the Johnny Depp case. He was in there with the case with Amber Heard. He got found not guilty. Amber Heard was put in a situation where she was able to start acting again right away, even after she tried to ruin Johnny Depp's life and his career. So one thing I would say is that we have to hold men accountable for domestic violence, but we also have to hold women accountable for their actions, and we also have to hold the women accountable who lie on men, end up putting these men's life in bad positions. And then what ends up happening is that these men end up having their careers and life put on hold. They end up getting found not guilty, and then everybody go back to their life like nothing happened. And they say things like, well, if he wouldn't have put himself in that position, that would have never happened. And yes, that's 100% true. It's a thing that's called radical responsibility. As a man, you should always try to go back and figure out where you went wrong so you don't put yourself in that situation again. But also at the same time, we can't let everybody else off the hook for the things that they do, but then try to hold someone else to a super high moral standard that we're not holding everybody to. Check out my original Chicago hood movie in the end screen, No Time to Play Fair. If you into sneakers, you a sneakerhead, you love seeing the new Jordans, Pumas, whatever it may be, subscribe to Kicking It with Fair Play 2333. If you trying to follow me on my basketball journey, my weightlifting and fitness journey, and also be inspired to get back on your fitness journey, subscribe to Fair Play, Flex, and Fadeaway. Also, any of these pages I just named, you can also find them on TikTok or Instagram.